Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to continue in our pliers wrench series, and we're going to take a look at a pair of very obvious twins again. Now these are exactly the same tool. When we took a look at the Ulsa and the Phoenix, those were very clearly the same tool here, and the handles were different. Now Proto does have a better quality handle, so you could kind of do the same thing here. This is the Craftsman V series and the Proto. Now both of these are under the blanket of Stanley Black & Decker, so I guess I'm not really surprised to see the exact same wrench with a Proto name and a Craftsman name on it. Now believe it or not, I was able to get the Proto cheaper than the Craftsman. Now retail is $50 for the Proto and $55 for the Craftsman. So I don't know if they're trying to budget the Craftsman name or what the dealio is there, but that's prices that I saw when I just did a search. If you're keeping track, both of these pliers are made in France, of all places. This may be one of the first French-made tools we've looked at here on the channel. So digging into these, we like to look at a few different things on these pliers wrenches when we get into them, and among that is the dimensions of the jaw and the depth that you can grab with it and everything else. So let's get into that with our scale. And the fixed jaw is right on 5/16. The movable jaw is also on 5/16. The fixed jaw can go about 1 3/8 inches straight, and obviously you could get back into here further, but we always measure the straight surface. And the movable jaw, you can get that 1 3/8 inches out of it also. So let's go 1 5/16 inches. I'm right in between there. So 1 5/16 inches for our dimension and 5/16 inches. Now these seem to have one of the larger keys that we've seen in any of these, and that is coming in right at 5/16 inches as well. That's pretty big. I think we've had, that's the biggest we've seen. We've had a bunch of 5/16 inches. The smallest was 1/4. So it's not, it might just be the way it's made. It might just be the way it's made here that it looks like it's larger. You can see how it kind of comes off of the push button here, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at what size these open up to fully, because it seems to be a little bit further than some of the others. So fully open, handles closed, we have 2 1/16, which is pretty good. Now fully open, handles open, we're at 2 1/4. So these are quite a bit bigger than most of all the other ones that we've seen. Now obviously the handle opened all the way like this isn't an overly usable pliers, so that's something to take into consideration as well. Now the adjuster button is something interesting because it is already flush. When you look at the tool, it's not standing proud, and they actually have it within the lines of the tool pretty well. I kind of like that. It does not take much to push it at all, but it starts out flush. So I don't know that you're going to have any nuisance pushing of the button, because you can see it's flush. You don't have anything like that. Now they have a bunch of adjustments here. One of the things I don't go over is how many adjustments the tools have. I think we kind of get the idea of what that is. Proto's the exact same. It's the same everything. These are identical. One just has Proto laser etched on it, and the other one has Craftsman. If you were to buy one of these, what would you expect to carry around in your work carry? So we'll measure both of them for funsies. We've got 19 ounces right on the dot, and I'm expecting to see something almost identical with the Proto, which is not surprising whatsoever. We got the 19 ounces. Now, one thing I like to look at with these is how well do the jaws line up. And you can see when you go full closed on these, you can have some misalignment with them occasionally, depending on how they close. You can see I'm getting it kind of all over the place. So these are a little sloppy. The plier handles don't feel bad, but the movable jaw seems to have a little bit more slack than we've seen on some others. This one should be about the same. Feels similar, maybe not quite as bad, but I know it's made at the same place. It just has a different thing etched on it. So it could be different runs, but not the worst we've seen, but it's not the greatest either. Alright, so the next thing we like to test on the tools is what is the hardness of these jaws on the Rockwell scale C, and what is the durometer using a Shure A scale. Now the durometer is how much this rubberized handle is pliable, if that makes sense. That will tell us how much grip there is basically in this handle and how much give there is in it. And really the Rockwell C scale is the same thing. The HRC is going to tell us how hard this is. Now we have been mostly seeing the movable jaws are harder than the stationary, but let's take a look at these and see how that holds up. We'll open this up good and wide, and we're going to start with an HRC 55. And we are scratching in, I don't know if you could hear that, on the fixed jaw. And I think we're scratching in on the movable jaw, though that would kind of glide it a little easier. Definitely easier on the 60. The 50 should be, yeah, 50's skating. The 50's on the verge of skating there, so I would say these fall on the 50 to 55 scale. We could double check with the Craftsman one since we have it here. Go with the 55. That's just grabbing in, and that's grabbing in. So yeah, I would say it's around between a 50 and a 55. And next up, we're going to use our Shure A meter here, and we're going to check some points on the rubber. Now we have to be as perpendicular and flush as possible, so let's see what we get here. About an 88, and here's a good spot, about an 86. Let's go to this one. About an 85 and an 87. So I think I'm happy with calling that an 86 and a 50 to 55. Something that I've been thinking about is the higher you get on this scale with the Shure A, I'm wondering if it's the more durability you can expect to see out of these handles. We'll see as we test, but we'll be going through and checking the Shure A on many of the pliers that we check from now on, and we'll start to get a good baseline on what we have. Okay, so we have the Craftsman V series over at the vise, and we're going to grip this about in the middle of the jaws, and we're going to see if we can get to 100 foot-pounds. and we slipped right at 90. So we couldn't quite get to 100 foot-pounds with those. Okay, so we're back. Now we're going to go and take a look at how these fared out in the microscope and see exactly how these slipped and what happened to them. I just was unable to hold them. Some of that could be me, but they slipped at 90 foot-pounds. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so we got the microscope fired up. Let's take a look at what happened with these, and we can see right off of the bat there is a very clear mar right here, and I can definitely feel that where we slipped on that hex driver. See that there. The fixed jaw overall doesn't look as though it took heavy abuse. There's a little bit of marring on both sides. You can see that. There's marring here as well. This is very smooth, but I can feel, especially here, a little bit of a detent. Now our stationary jaw, if I can get that into focus here, really doesn't have any noticeable signs of wear on it whatsoever. There's really nothing in it. And that's a common thing that we've seen with these pliers wrenches, is the stationary jaw is softer than the fixed jaw. We have just a tiniest mark. If I can get that into focus right here. Just the tiniest mark. I don't think I can feel it all. Let's look at the side of this. You can just barely make that out right here. Oh, there we go. Get the reflection in there. There you go. You can just see it, but I can't really, I guess I can feel it. Just a little bit. So I can just feel that. You can kind of see the scale going down in there. So these have been marked up on the fixed and the movable jaw. Try that light trick again here. You can see that really kind of just slid there, and that gave it a whole bunch of marring there. So let's continue looking at these, and you can see here your Craftsman marking. That's their part number. That's laser etched into the tool. You can see the casting isn't the best quality, but it's not the worst we've seen. They do have laser etching for a scale in the side of the tool here. So it gives you an idea where you're at as far as how far you're open. I do have an indicator there. And then you have your Craftsman branding. Here's your Craftsman V series laser etched into this. Here's your handle. Let's flip it over. Here's your jaw, your mechanism, spring-loaded part, and then here are the teeth that it engages on. Nothing really, I don't think there's anything bad or great about these. It's a pair of pliers. The Proto is going to be much the same. You're going to see Proto is laser etched into the tool. Same scale markings we saw on the Craftsman, and your tool part number. Very much the same exact tool that we saw with the Craftsman. Alright, welcome back over to the load cell vise. Now we have the Proto. We torture tested the Craftsman with the 100 foot-pounds. This one we're going to do our load cell compression test with, and to do that we're going to take the load cell about out at the tip of the pliers and see how much force we can apply, and then we're going to move it in side of the pliers, and that'll give us an idea of what the flex of this tool is at each location. So to start out, I happen to know that this will exert, we want to get to about 75 on the load cell in the vise. So what we're going to do is start at 5 and see how much force we're exerting. Okay, so 5 is 50, and we're going to measure. Okay, we're 2 3/8, and now we're going to crank this up to 75. Right there, about. Kind of backing off kind of quick, the pliers is stretching. But we'll go with 75 there, 1 3/4 and 500. Okay, so that's our baseline. We should get a higher mark when we go to the inside. Now we should be able to set this basically the same way and crank this. Oops, we don't want to go that far yet. Make sure everything kind of zeros. Alright, now we can go. So now we want to get this to 5 again. Wow, 5 is not much. Okay, 5 is 45, and 2 3/8 again, so that's believable. Now we're going to go to 75 again. $75 gets us to, we just hit it and it's coming down. These are stretching quite a bit. Let's call it 640 and 2 inches even. So these get decent force on them. I'm surprised they wanted to slip. That's interesting. So there you have it. I'm not sure why these slipped. I was kind of expecting to see lower compression numbers off of these because of the fact that this pliers slipped off of there. These were getting some really high numbers compared to what we saw on some of the other pliers, but yet it still wanted to slip when I got higher in torque. It didn't want to lock. So it might have something to do with the way this slides in the mechanism. I'm just not sure. Overall, these are made by Stanley Black & Decker. They're both the same. For the price point that they're at, I don't know how I feel about them. I think you're paying a lot for not as much. I think we saw some better made options that didn't want to slip and for less money. I think for the money that these cost, you could buy Knipex and have a better pliers, a better machined pliers, a better pretty much everything. So I'm not overly impressed with that. As far as their functionality, I don't think it's really bad. I think they'll get you through some stuff, but I think there's better value somewhere else. That's just my opinion. I wouldn't say if you have these already, you have a junky pair of pliers, but I think I would say there might be some better options unless you can get a really good deal on these. That would be a fair caveat. If you could pick one of these up for $25, $30, perfectly okay pair of pliers. I think they're absolutely within that range easily. But for what they cost, I think you can do better with your money. I don't really mean to be down on them. I don't like to be down on any tool. I think all tools have a purpose. But as far as value, I don't think I could really say these are a great value for what they are. They're functional. They get the job done. If that's what you have, you don't have junk. They're well-made pliers, but I think seeing the force and feeling them under load, it doesn't add up. So I don't think force is really everything in these pliers, and I think these prove it. The force that these have at the jaws is comparable to Knipex, if not better, and the Knipex is a far better pair of pliers, as that didn't even begin to think about slipping at 100 foot-pounds. So I think that's very interesting. These very unique take on the pliers. I kind of like the adjusting on them, that it's flush, and it doesn't seem like it'd be as easy to get into. That would be something that I'd like to hear feedback from people, if they have issues with that when they get into the tools. So let me know if you have these in the comments below, what you think of either of them, and if you feel them slipping now and then, or if you're frustrated with them, if you have a different pair to compare them to, how do these stack up? I think that's a very interesting conversation to have, and I'd like to see it in the comments for people who are looking into buying these tools. So as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.